let's fire up today's crush. Comes to cannabis regulations, what should we do?
Break the law.
That's it. You will want to hear our guest today, for sure, 100%. You need to hear this stuff. Unlike what's going on in Hollywood and the Pentagon and the White House, this is real stuff. We have a guest with us today in studio. And yes, I have moved to the other side of the table for those astute followers of the show. And yes, I do have my tie on. I know I don't have a collar, but I got the tie on, so that means I'm 100% telling the truth, right? That's what you always believe, right? Well, I don't know. Everybody doesn't wear a tie to tell the truth, but I do, because that's how we get reminded that the guy's telling the truth. So who do we have to hear today? We have a former enlisted person in the Canadian Navy. What does that got to do with Green Crush? What is Green Crush, by the way? Green Crush is the green. Well, the green is cannabis. And the crush is the cancer that tried to take me down twice and lost both times. And if you come back, it's okay. I got it. I can deal with it. I know how to get out of that. I feel like I'm Penn and Teller sometimes. These are the magicians who do their tricks and then show you how they did them to debase their competitors and drive entertainment from that, to derive entertainment from showing you later how to do the tricks that they do and how to undress the alleged magic that everybody seems so mesmerized by. And so that's what we're going to do with Green Crush. And crushing cancer, and crushing the laws that restrict our access to something that has already been shown to be very effective against cancer and other horrible diseases. And then we can swing our focus over to the opioid crisis, which somehow has our government in a tizzy. What are we going to do? Let's have a bunch of expensive meetings. Let's fly here. Let's fly there. How are we going to remedy this problem? And I can tell you that if I were the one who had found my way to procure the opium poppies from Afghanistan that I am guarding with my military, and I brought those poppies back to synthesize into this poison that some of the drug people actually testified in Congress back in 1999 or 2000 perhaps, trying to bring opioids in because, the money was there. And since that time of the testimony, if you will, of the alleged doctor who allegedly is interested in helping your health, who was clearly a liar or a paid-off monkey or an idiot. I'll get the clip up later. We'll stick it on the website. But this fella back in 2000 is telling the Congress or some kind of congressional hearing that, this stuff isn't really expected to get people addicted to it at all. It's going to be quite helpful for everyone, and it's all going to be great, said the drug companies. And then the government said, okay, said the government. So that's where we're stuck with now, this opioid crisis of spending millions of bajillions of dollars to try to figure it out. And all you have to do is arrest the sons of bitches who are bringing in the opium in the first place to make these opioids. Then you go to the facilities that make these opioids and you shut them down, as you would do to me if I were making these opioids and selling them for gross profit out of my kitchen. That's what you would do for me. That's what you would do. You would bust me or anybody else. Somehow these guys get away with this stuff. And when I say somehow, that's an S with the two lines through it. And they go to the government and say this. Since 2000, opioid addiction in the United States has killed 300,000 people. And all of a sudden, ISIS is going limp dick because they'd love to do that. And we put so much money into defeating ISIS, but the homies at home cranking out this stone of terror, this opioid addiction to your death, somehow get to keep on making that stuff while the politicians fly around and have expensive conferences. And the reason I'm so up against this is because last week's show we got into the first half of a dissection of the 60 Minutes piece to try to explain how you are being hosed and fooled. But basically, this is the whole story. The drug companies manipulated the politicians to allow the opioids to become a crisis. And now these same politicians are saying, oh no, what can we do? And so far as I can understand, the best plan is to arrest and imprison, hopefully on their side, anybody using this stuff. And that's how we'll fix it. These idiots. And again, this is all coming from allegedly clear minds, clear-thinking people who don't sully it with this terrible green crush substance called cannabis. That would just ruin everyone's thought patterns. Yeah. This veil is coming apart. The bullshit veil that's been surrounding this terrible poison and the ways of government, and not just that, everything is coming apart. It's the best. I think it's really good that Hollywood is imploding. And I'm not being facetious. It's kind of like when you have an old house and it's all terrible. It's kind of cute, it's kind of neat, and you kind of remember it. But basically, it's rotten to the friggin' core. Time to tear it down and rebuild. So let's do that without all of the pedophiles that have been making movies lately. But that's not fully what this show's about. I'm just saying these are the government people doing those kinds of things and the establishment people doing those kinds of things, telling folks like us who want to heal, telling a person like me who was on death's door that I'm not allowed to try this thing and I shouldn't use it and it's bad. I don't have a fuck you strong enough for these folks today. I don't want to muster it. It's not worth it. Especially when we do have our guest, Don McElroy, will be coming in shortly. And you will want to hear her. Yeah, there's been a high-profile arrest, and there are more coming. And I am not now referring to the Hollywood pedophiles or anyone on Team Trump. I am referring to the gentleman in charge of the company INSYS. INSYS. This scumbag is brick number one of the coming down of the criminal empire. There was an arrest, and people weren't really talking about it because drug companies are always correct, and we always have to believe them. But the INSYS guy, Kapoor, his name is, and he has been charged. Let's pull this up. He has been charged in the opioid marketing crisis. Finally, they've got one guy who is legitimately a son of a bitch, and I hope he goes to jail. Of course, you know when you're making profits in the pharmaceutical world, that's billions, right? But one of Arizona's richest men was arrested early Thursday last week and charged with a leading conspiracy to profit by using bribes and fraud to market a powerful opioid narcotic. John Kapoor, 74. Hey, let's wrap up your life in the clink. That's tough when you're old, eh? Go in there, Johnny boy, founder and majority owner of Chandler, Arizona-based INSYS Therapeutics Incorporated, INSYS. Scumbag. Going down hard, I hope. Arrested and charged with the illegal distribution of a fentanyl spray intended for cancer patients and for violating anti-kickback laws. And these are the same people proffering vaccines at every turn that all of the sheep say, you must take all of these all the time. You're nuts not to do that. How do you put that on one side of your head? That there's always this sacrosanct notion of the pharmaceutical companies to take these vaccines in your arm or wherever. But on the other hand, you're furious and angry at people charging like $700 for an EpiPen. And this scumbag, Kapoor, who's going to jail at 74. Don't kid yourself. It'll be a country club. Probably find Conrad Black's graffiti on the wall. But, hey, man, we're just starting with you. You don't think it stops at Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. You don't think it stops with Kevin Spacey when it comes to pedophiles. Surely we can't stop with only one manufacturer of these poisons. And to my government in Canada and to all the other governments of the world, Australia, New Zealand, I don't know what's happening in Russia. I know we have listeners, but are you also looking into this opioid crisis that can be so easily taken care of by busting the idiots who've been putting it into the workplace and the mind space and the marketplace and replacing that with a plant in the basement that you're growing that you're not going to get arrested for, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 4 in Canada. You can only have 4. In Canada, we have some legislation coming in soon that says you can have 4 plants. That's too bad that my prescription has me having 24 plants in my house to make sure I can maintain everything that I'm doing. But they're liars and people believe them, and that's the way it goes. So, as none of this blatant murderous criminality of being an opioid profiteer is demanded from others, you have to trust in this industry, and you have to insist on mandatory vaccinations from these same people that are involved in a criminal activity. And I can't believe that so many people are so easily led with. And I'm not saying either. Let me get to this because I know the haters are going to come in with this. But I'm not saying that there shouldn't be vaccines. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any, and I'm saying there shouldn't be mandatory vaccines, and there should be investigations into the companies that continuously put out vaccines, only to then later say, hey, that one's not right on top of things. We made a few mistakes. Some of the virus, but take it anyway. Take it anyway. Take it anyway. Keep stuffing your brain with incremental amounts of shit that doesn't need to be there, and you'll be fine. That's all fiction, right? So I'm so happy that we do have a guest on the show today to take off some of the edge. But she also has a very dark story. But I will say that I'm very happy to have her here, and I wouldn't mind just perhaps giving a whoop of joy. I don't know where Paul Flynn is. I hope he's listening. But Paul, are you there?
And I gave a little whoop of joy.
There he is. Okay, Paul, I'm glad you're happy. I'm happy. We're all happy. Everybody that needs to be getting arrested is arrested. Before we bring our guest on, I do want to slice through a little bit of this article that just recently came out in one of Canada's national publications, coast to coast. And it's the Globe and Mail. So you've probably heard of that. Even if you're not based in this country, welcome all listeners of the world. Here's an article by Adriana Barton. So if you want to get in touch with her after this and ask her personally a series of questions that I'm going to ask her, and maybe when I read this, you'll have some questions of your own, at Adriana Barton, at ADRIANABARTON, at Adriana Barton. Thank you for reminding me that propaganda is not dead. It's in full force. Here's her article, Clearing the Air. You know that's a lie because by the time you're finished reading this, it's even more foggy than it was before. Lie number 1, probably a drunk journalist, definitely a lazy one, maybe even one on a pay packet to try to shit all over the awareness of this green stuff that's so fantastic. So she says, clearing the air with legalization on the horizon in Canada. Dispensaries are marketing marijuana as a cure for what ails you, including cancer. Do the claims hold up? Adriana Barton takes a closer look at the science behind cancer and cannabis. Here we go. This is from October 23rd of this year. In a lab at the University of Nottingham in England, brain cancer specialist Richard Grundy is growing cells from children's brain tumors to see if cannabidiol, a compound in marijuana, can kill them. Brain tumor cells rarely thrive outside the body, though, so he'll be lucky if half a dozen cell clusters survive long enough to study the hunch. It's his hunch. Even if the compound snuffs out cancer cells in the lab, there's no guarantee it would do the same in humans. Okay, let me editorialize here. Even if the compound snuffs out cancer cells in the lab, There's no guarantee it would do the same in humans, is what Adriana Barton is saying about this particular experiment. But can you swing your focus over to chemotherapy? Is it okay to say chemotherapy, there's no guarantee it would do the same in humans? Radiation, there's no guarantee it would do the same in humans. So that's a completely empty and disingenuous statement, but you can see trying to chip the mindset of focus on going, oh, this doesn't work to the average reader. Here's my favorite sentence almost in the whole piece. But, he said, one has to start somewhere. Do you, Richard? Richard Grundy, 2017, busy in the lab, starting with cancer research. That sums up the current stage of research on cannabis and cancer. It's at the start. Now we're back to Adriana Barton. She says that this guy has played around with brain tumor cells outside of the body because he couldn't really do it inside of the body, and he's just starting out. This idiot, Adriana Barton, who says she's clearing the air, is muddying the pond with this bullshit claim. That sums up the current stage of research on cannabis and cancer, you lazy fucking journalist. Holy shit. I'd like to sum up your career as a journalist, but I can't because you're doing a really good job of being a journalist with this fiction. Who do you think you are, you poisonous person? To steer people away from something that is already well known to be much more developed as a cancer and very many other ailment remedy of cancer, of cannabis, is out there and is available. Why is this person saying that it isn't? I don't have the answer to this. It's not like I'm leading you somewhere other than she drinks alcohol 100%. I'm gonna bet that. I don't know that, but for sure she pounds them back. A writer, after work. But how dare you say, you idiot, that we're just starting somewhere and that sums up the current stage of research on cannabis and cancer? You're not all there, love. You're not all there, you silly gal. You just don't have it going on. You're either completely horrendously lazy and deserve to be fired, or you're deliberately lying in that way. And I think we don't care which one of those it is. Doesn't matter. Because, love, sweetie, journalist, researcher, that sums it all up. Tell me about this. Tell me about this article from 2009, August. What's that? 8 years ago, dummy? From Cancer Research UK, which, by the way, also has articles on its very site that says cannabis is not effective against cancer. On their same website, they say, cannabis chemicals stop prostate cancer growth. Active chemicals in cannabis have been shown to halt prostate cancer cell growth, according to research published in the British Journal of Cancer today. That was 19th of August, 2009. So I guess in 2017, you dumb idiot, they're not just starting cancer research. This goes all the way back to 2009 when they started cancer research. Oh, my mistake. Back in 2001, when The Guardian put out that cannabis is a medical miracle and it's official, and that it had already surpassed doctors and patients and cannabis campaigners' expectations beyond where they ever dared hope, with some patients calling it a miracle. This is an article from 2001, Adriana. Were you in a sandbox back then? How old are you? Get a friggin' clue before you ever write an article again, ever. You poisonous person. And you're the one that I'm targeting today because you are the representative of a legion of scumbag writers who continuously and continually proffer lies about a healthful substance. Well, you get smashed on, Jack. And you need to stop, because all of this terrible shepherding of the average person who's not well researched into this is steering the ship into the position where we're all believing the government that the best idea is to let a purveyor of booze sell cannabis. And I'm now finding out that one of the major reasons for this is for union control. Hey, I want a union job. I want to sell cannabis. Fuck off. Okay? Every single one of you vampires. We need to change the legislation of Canada, of Ontario, the province within, who's apparently the leader in adopting new means of distribution for. We need to stop. This legislation sucks. In and out. It's not freedom. It's legalization, which is basically you need to learn another language so that you can afford not to go to jail. You need to figure it out. You need to go to law school to understand what your rights are under a bogus series of constructs put together by rapacious sharks who are doing anything they can to fatten their pockets, like this scumbag opioid dealer, one of many, I hope, to soon fall down the hole of getting busted and stopping profiting and taking these opioids off the market. So you're not clearing the air, Adriana Barton of the Globe and Mail. Once again, if you want to contact her, she is at Adriana Barton, ADRIANABARTON. Just a real piece of work, this gal. All right, so then here we're going to go. I'm going to keep going. Oh, yeah, because the research just started, right? I just told you about an article from 2001 where it's a done deal, where they dispel the oft reinflated myth that it's only anecdotal. It's not only anecdotal, it's time to start work. And guess what? If it were only anecdotal, there are far too many anecdotes to ignore. And anyone that does is just, well, irresponsible. So that doesn't sum up the current stage of research. So you're a liar in the actual title of the friggin' piece, Clearing the Air. Compelling stories of patient recoveries, she says, combined with laboratory evidence of possible cancer-fighting effects, have spurred researchers worldwide to put cannabis to the test. Just now is kind of how she's trying to make it seem. So far, scientists have observed anti-tumor activity in cells cultured in petri dishes or grafted onto mice or out of my friggin' nuts and my prostate and everywhere else. I'm stage 4, sweets. Going down hard, no way out of it. What do you got to say about that? The only way I can lose this argument is if I did so die 3 years ago. So bring it on. I am so looking forward to having somebody in who will counter my point of view. I smell fear. So plenty of experimental cancer recipes have shown promise in early studies, but they only fail in human trials. They only fail. I didn't fail. I'm here. You failed. You're lying, Adriana. The cautious pace of medical research hasn't stopped Canada's unregulated marijuana dispense. And right away, again, with the word marijuana, keeping it in the old school, keeping it, you know, that was the image they put on it to sort of make everyone they feel like it was a devilly terrible drug. You know, it's a racist thing. They use the Spanish language and Mexican people to, you know, decriminalize this marijuana to make it bad, you know. Idiots. Here comes the fun stuff. Hasn't stopped Canada's unregulated marijuana dispensaries from marketing cannabis as a cancer cure. Why would it, with all the anecdotal evidence? Some sell it with a veneer of science, quoting Harvard University researchers out of context as saying cannabis significantly reduces the ability of the cancer to spread. Yeah, out of context? How is that out of context? Cannabis stops the spread of cancer. It's called apoptosis. How's that for exhaustive research? Cellular suicide of cells that have decided that they can't handle the cannabis attack and they kill themselves. Just an idea. What do we got here? Oh, here we go. Right up my street. And I'll close it out after this. We're going to bring our guest on soon. That's Dawn McElroy. She used to be in the Canadian military. She's got some fascinating stories about why she got into there and why she got out. So, some quoted out of context, saying cannabis significantly reduces the ability of cancer to spread. That's not out of context, love. I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here without any of the strictures and problems that go along with suffering from stage 4 cancer, love. Okay? Why don't you come down here? And if you were a man, I'd be saying the same thing, love, sweetie. Because I don't have much respect for you, I'll give you that. I'm not one of these regular shows where we have to pretend that this monster that we're having in is okay. I don't care about that. It's just a window dressing. I don't like you, I'm being honest. This isn't just a shitty piece you wrote. You're affecting the mindset and the views of people that may be turning down a viable option for recovery while you sit there scratching out some other pile of nonsense. Others, she says, link to a video with 1.2 million YouTube views featuring Rick Simpson, a Canadian living abroad, who claims homegrown cannabis cured his skin cancer. Several websites take a conspiracy theory approach. Yeah. Describing a high-potency cannabis oil called Phoenix Tears, which is what I use to get out of this, by the way. Maybe I'm not making a big enough noise. Maybe you didn't know I was out there. Maybe you didn't try to come and get me because you never heard of me. Maybe you did and you didn't want to ask me anything to undermine your story. Do you get paid by the word? And do you get paid by the word if it smells like poo? Because you must be loaded right now. Phoenix Tears as the cancer cure the government doesn't want you to know about. And the reason Rick Simpson says that is because it's accurate. And Adriana Barton, if you're going to sit here and try to besmirch the character of the man that invented the elixir that has brought myself and so many others back from the frigging grave, then how about this? You also share with the people why Rick Simpson, as you so cavalierly explain, is living abroad. Doesn't that sound nice, to live abroad? Oh, he's living abroad. Isn't that cool? So basically what you're saying is you didn't contact him for the piece either with your exhaustive research. You didn't even call him. You're just going to toss out, he's living abroad. He's living abroad in Croatia or somewhere, I believe, because the idiots at the helm who snap your whips and the Canadian government have decided that he can't live here anymore. So don't be such an idiot about it. We'll get to more of your nonsense either. Later on, this is all bad news. So moving from bad news to good news, I would like to introduce everyone today to our guest. And it's very nice to meet you. I'd like to just, give a little whoop of joy. Can we do that?
And I gave a little whoop of joy.
There we go. All right, well, it's nice to meet you. This is Don McElroy. Folks, you might recognize Don from the cover of Maclean's magazine. Not a very recent one, but a super important one. Nice to have Don in the studio. Don, at one time in her life, was not in the military, and then she decided to get into the military. So maybe you can tell us about that first, because there's a lot of reasons why folks want to join up.
Okay, first there's Mcilmoyle.
Oh, God.
That's okay, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Thanks for listening, folks. The show's over. I'm an idiot. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. That is right. You did tell me before the show, and I unfortunately looked at the wrong piece of paper. And good night. But I'm so sorry. But, yeah, so you were, where are you from exactly?
I'm from Peterborough, Ontario.
Okay, nice to
I
know.
was 18 years old. I had already graduated high school, but didn't have my grade 13 yet. Only half of it. So I decided, because I didn't have the marks to go to university, I lived on my own since I was 17. So
Okay.
I didn't have the marks, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the backing to actually go to university. And I always wanted to be a doctor. So I thought, I'll join the military.
Because they'll
I'll
fund
learn
your
a trade.
Yeah.
I'll go to night school, get courses, and then hopefully if I get enough courses, I can prove to the military that I could be a doctor, and they would pay for it. So I had a grand plan.
That
at
is
18.
a grand plan. I've heard a similar thing from a fellow once about dentistry. Same story, exactly the same. Couldn't afford to get in. And so you decided to get in, and you got in.
Yeah, so I went to basic training at 18 years old. I
Into
turned
the
19 there.
Navy. Is that right?
Basic training was for everyone.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, I was a naval signalman, so after basic training, we all went to our posts.
Okay. I am listening. We've got some activity going on over here.
I know.
So you went to your post?
So I did basic training in Cornwallis,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was posted to Canadian Forces Fleet School of Esquimalt.
Esquimalt, that's in BC on the island, right? Vancouver Island?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're there learning everything you need to learn, and you're climbing up in your knowledge of things and becoming, what was your function? How did your plan that you wanted to get in to be a doctor, how did that go off the rails?
Well, it went off the rails pretty quickly.
Oh, gosh.
Because my assault happened about 4 weeks after I got to Esquimalt.
So you're transferred to Esquimalt, and now you're in that, and then is it the Navy or is it the Army?
It was in the Navy,
it was in the
yes.
Navy, okay.
But it was in training.
In
so
training.
I
So
was ready for my course. I couldn't take my course yet because I needed a top security clearance to do my course.
Okay.
And that takes a while for them to investigate you.
Right.
So I was on pre-course, which is where you just learn all about your trade, but you don't actually take your trade yet.
I see. Okay, that's when the assault took place.
Yes.
Are you able to describe the assault?
I'd rather not, but I'll
Okay.
tell you that the next day I did go to the police and I went to the hospital.
Okay.
But I was told that because there was two of them, one of me, and because I was drinking, that there was really nothing I could do. I should consider it a learning experience.
Okay. And are we able to say, are these folks who, I don't want to go into too many details because I don't want to upset you, but when you say it happened, you when you were out there, you mean like from military other personnel as opposed to someone on the street of Esquimalt?
Yeah, it's in McLean's. It was like actually a very trusted friend and his roommate. So,
Well, isn't that usually the case?
but because I had been drinking and was taken to their room, once I reported it, I was charged for being in a male room after 2,300 hours because that's not allowed.
Charged with being in the mail. You were charged with anything.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So then I was forced to do confinement to barracks with one of my alleged assaulters because I never actually did charge him.
Oh,
So
that is
I got.
So how long were you in the environment with this aggressor?
Well, the whole time I was in BC, he was around. I pulled my boots up. I did my course. I got top student, and then I got posted to Halifax to just get away from it all.
Okay.
Because I'd been in BC for a year. It followed me everywhere. I got so much.
I'm sure after this happened that you reported it the next day, and then you were told that it wasn't valid because you had drinks, and there were two of them and one of you, and so you didn't get anywhere with any kind of complaint, and you've got to live with that every day throughout
And
the
I
year.
had to work with the guy. I had to see him. And then I was constantly in trouble. Like all his friends were trying to get me in trouble, and
Such a.
Yeah.
Well, can you tell me how they
I got
might try to-
charged again because like every girl went on the male floor, and I went up there once. I never even got caught up there, but I still got charged again. And then they sent me on alcohol rehab because I'd been drinking that day. So at 19 years old, I got sent to alcohol rehab because of all of this.
I didn't think anybody in the Navy would have to endure alcohol rehab. I don't think you can have a Navy without alcohol. But anyway.
But I wasn't really drinking any different than any of my other friends.
So
but
you weren't hammered. You weren't getting irresponsibly shit-faced or something.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
Because you're 19 in the Navy.
Okay. Okay.
25 cents a shot on ship. Like.
Well, yeah, because the only reason I'm asking is like, how much legitimacy to their complaint that you were under too heavy on alcohol would that be able? Like,
But
okay.
that's not even a legitimate.
No, it
thing.
isn't. It isn't. But I'm just trying to say, do you think in their minds they're trying to use that you're drunk basically, and any kind of problem was your fault? Because of
Yeah,
that?
I think that they tried to turn it all around and put it on me.
Yeah.
Because I had people telling me that like I should compare a sexual assault to a punch in the nose and just keep going. And then I got told that if I wanted to be in the Navy, I should learn to be a slut and keep my mouth shut.
Do you mind telling us the rank of the person that said that? I know you're not going to tell me their name. But
Petty officer.
a petty officer. Well, you're not kidding. I've always hated that term. So, if you feel comfortable naming any of these folks, you probably won't. But
No.
I'm just putting out the blanket question at the beginning because I gotta ask, right? So, but thanks for sharing the rank. So this is how many levels above you as a petty officer to where you were?
3.
Three ranks. I don't know all these things.
Yeah, about 3 above me.
3 above you. Okay.
The thing though that I think is like, yeah, I was assaulted,
Yeah.
but it was the chiefs and the petty officers and the captains that all like charged me and did my punishments and stuff that really ruined my life.
Do you think there's a deep hidden resentment in any military, and certainly the aspect of it that you were in, where they just don't want women in there?
In 1991, when this happened to me, yes.
Yeah. Just
I
like
can
we
say,
just
like,
wish you weren't here, and we don't want to hear all your nonsense, right? Just off to the side.
Yeah,
You
like
felt that.
nowadays it is getting better, but it is still a problem.
Yeah.
So
But back, you're like a pioneer of this, like 25 years ago.
I'm pretty
or something.
sure women, the first time they were allowed in the Navy was 89.
Wow. So you're right in there at the very beginning kind of thing. And yeah, so there was a lot of resentment, obviously, from these folks. And so now you're in Halifax, and this is all in Canada so far, folks. So here we go.
So when I got to Halifax, I ended up getting really sick because there was just so much stress of everything that was happening to me.
And what kind of sickness?
Well, at first I got like gallbladder problems, which I had no control over. But I ended up in the hospital and things, and then like I got in trouble on ship, like telling me, oh, I swallowed, that I did it on purpose. And I was like, did I swallow sand to get gallstones? Like, I'm sorry, no. And then I started to get harassed on ship, and I asked about my divisional officer, and I was told I didn't have one. So
You didn't have one. That's
Yeah.
unusual, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So then the stress was just getting to be a lot, and I ended up losing like 30 pounds, and I had been seeing a psychiatrist because of all of this, and he just put me ashore.
A Navy psychiatrist. I guess,
It was in the actual base hospital, but I think at this point it was a civilian doctor, a civilian psychiatrist that had just come in on contract.
Right.
And then I ended up in the psych ward because I had lost so much weight and just the stress, and I'd had 2 operations in 4 months.
Did you feel when you were in the psych ward that was a legitimate place for you to be? Because some people go, oh, God, thank God
No,
I'm here."
because at the time, the guy that I really, really liked worked in the hospital on the floor that the psych ward was in. And I said to all the doctors, I can't be here with my roommate that I lived with as one of the psych nurses and the guy that I like around the corner, and they told me to just smarten up and get with the program. Because I asked to go to the civilian hospital.
And
Because
again, this is all in Halifax? Mm-hmm. Okay. So then you're in the psych hospital.
So in the psych hospital, I ended up saying that I didn't want to be here anymore, which kind of meant that I wanted to die. But within a week, I had my release.
And all this time, were you on any kind of medications?
I did start to take Prozac, but I really don't like medication. So I would take it,
High five.
and then I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then they released me within a week. I was on a bus with 3 great big bottles worth of Prozac to go home. Like enough to kill myself, really.
And you're coming out of almost a suicide watch, and they're sending you home with enough drugs to make that happen.
The last place I wanted to be was home.
Yeah.
I just failed.
So
I felt.
there you were, failed at home with all these drugs. Then what happened?
I don't really remember a lot that happened, but I kind of woke up 6 weeks later in a psych ward in Oshawa, and the doctor told me that I was pregnant, which
Wow.
I didn't even know because in the military they told me I would never have children.
Why did they tell you that?
I had a bunch of tests done, and they told me that I had all of these problems and I would never have children.
Huh.
So when the doctor told me, I was kind of like, how did that happen? But I mean, I was in a really bad spot, but I saw that as a reason to live.
Good for you.
Right.
Because you were so marginalized and suppressed. That was your way out, ironically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
a fascinating thing. I've also been through the same thing in that way. Like there's nothing you could do, anything about it, and that's how I found my way out.
So I had my son, and that was
Right.
like a reason to live. And then I got married to an abusive man, had another son.
Oh,
But
gosh.
then I decided to go to nursing school because I always wanted to be a doctor.
Right.
Right.
Still had
And-
that going.
Yeah.
Nice.
But here I was in a different place, 2 kids, couldn't really afford to go to be a doctor, but I could afford to go to 5 years of university.
Yeah.
So I went back to summer school and high school at like 27 to take chemistry.
Yeah.
And then the next year to get my OAC chemistry. And then I got into the nursing program at Trent University.
Okay.
So I worked full time, had
Yeah.
2 small children. I was divorced by this point. Had 2 small children, worked full time, and went to nursing school.
Okay. So you became a nurse?
Yes.
And you are a nurse.
So I got my Bachelor of Science in nursing.
Fantastic.
And I tried really, really hard to be a nurse, and I loved it more than anything.
Yeah.
But then I had teenagers, and I
Right.
had PTSD, and I was in some work environments that weren't the most healthy.
And along
And-
the way, your PTSD, how were you managing this, or just waking up to it every day? Were you taking pills or any kind of thing?
I was so medicated.
On?
At one point, I was on 1,500 milligrams of Seroquel.
Oh, that's a serotonin something. What does that do? Make you sleep or
It's
something?
like an antipsychotic. It kind of like slows things down in your brain so you don't hear things and stuff.
Serotonin
It's
quelling it, as in pushing
Kind
it
of,
down.
yeah.
Seroquel.
so it helps you sleep. It helps just regulate, right? But
But-
I'm a nurse,
Right.
and when we had the elderly get violent or something, we gave them 25 to 50 milligrams of Seroquel.
And you're taking
And I was taking 1,500
daily.
daily.
All at once, or was it staggered
It was
throughout?
staggered. It was like 300, 300, 300, 600. But then I worked straight nights, and I had kids and everything. So, and then people started dying. And I just, with my PTSD, I lost it all. I just lost it.
Who people started dying?
Because I worked in nursing homes
Oh, I see.
and
Right,
stuff
right, right.
like
Your
that.
patients and folks around you were just popping off all the time.
Yeah.
So that's you're not even recovered from PTSD. Now there's more like constant death swirling around. You're in this vortex, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you then move out of that? Because we're working towards eventually your cover story on the Maclean's magazine and why
Well,
that
that
was and how it went down.
Was way back, like after I had my second son, I was trying to get my pension.
Mm-hmm.
And my pension lawyer called me, and he said he found another girl that was like me. And he said, I don't normally do this, but you guys need to talk.
Oh wow,
So-
two patients, similar patients. He wanted
He
you to
called
talk.
me.
Wow.
She called me, and we talked and talked. And I had already went to the Globe and Mail and stuff like that and tried to tell my story,
Yeah.
but
The
no
Globe
one would
and
listen
Mail?
to me.
Well, I wonder if Adriana Barton was working there at the time. She's this horrible hack they now have in their employ. I don't think she was there back then, but it doesn't seem like they've turned around. There's a lot of propagandists in the journalism industry.
They
But-
said my story was too controversial.
what?
Yeah. So Anne Margaret called Maclean's and told them our stories.
Anne
And-
Margaret?
That was her name,
Okay,
the girl that I met.
right.
I shouldn't say her name.
That's okay. I was thinking of the famous Anne
no.
Margaret. She tied
But
into this.
my friend didn't have any documentation or anything to prove what had happened to her. And I had everything because I had written a 100-page story about what happened to me.
Yeah, to keep track of it, right?
And I
Yeah.
had all my documents and I had
Sure.
everything. So when Maclean's came to talk to me, I had everything. So
But it was
they're
too
like,
controversial that you had all the facts.
That was the Globe and Mail, but Maclean's was like, oh yeah, we're on this.
Maclean's was on it, but the Globe and Mail. See, this article today, I know you couldn't hear me talking about it, but this thing, I can't even get through it reading it because it's so almost every paragraph has 2 or 3 completely 180s to the truth or omissions, you know. And they just shape the story the way they want it. But for the Globe and Mail or anyone in the press to say, that's too controversial, I just thought if it's new and if it's happening and if you found out about it, and it's controversial, you get it on there. That's the thing you do put on. You know, not to avoid that. That would be the whole game, I figure. But I guess I'm wrong. Well,
So from the time I talked to them to the time that came out was like 3 weeks.
yeah.
And I didn't even like really know. I was going to Toronto one day and I went in the store and there was my face everywhere.
Wow. From the Maclean's magazine, you're walking by like bookstores and everything, and
Yeah. So because of that, I set up a 1-800 number and I tried to start an organization called, well, it was from the States. It was called Survivors Take Action Against Abuse by Military Personnel.
okay,
But it was just me.
right.
And I was trying to get people hooked up all over Canada, but I kind of got on an emotional overload because
Yeah.
it was just me.
by yourself doing all that.
Plus, I really got put down by old men. I'm not trying to be rude, but
That's
when
okay.
I go on
No.
chat groups and stuff about trying to find other women that were like me,
Right.
I really got beat down by some
Old men
that were like, that doesn't happen. And,
Right.
you know,
We're way past that now. You know, we get it now, like the whole Harvey Weinstein and everything that's coming apart, and there's so much what I guess you could call a scuzz factor in the institutional systems such as this.
but from 1998 till 2014, there was really nothing done. And then in 2014, another woman came forward in McLean's, and then they started the Deschamps report and the sexual assault surveys and things like that. So what was the 16-year delay?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it was a time for you to suffer, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
That's what they put aside just for you. So there's a lot of lies here, and there's a lot of fictions, and your case is not unique in that way. These
Not
kinds
at
of
all.
things go on. Not just we don't all wind up on McLean's magazine, but this
Exactly. But it took me 18 years to find out that I'm not alone and that there's many others like me.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best healing experiences ever.
Oh, good. So do you figure you still carry any kind of PTSD, or are you working through it, or where are you at
I
right
have
now,
it all the time
at this
because
moment?
I've been re-traumatized over and over and over again in my life.
Okay,
So-
well, I'm sorry that I made you come in here today. I'm
No,
sure
that's okay. It's time to speak up. It's time
Yeah.
to. I fell into a hole. I fell down for a long time,
Right.
and now I finally feel better, and I want to stand up again because if abuse teaches you anything, it's that you have to stand up for yourself and you have to stand up for others.
Well, maybe somebody's doing that because, as we just shared earlier before the show started today, there was an article, there was a piece that came up on the news about a military, a Quebec, somebody rather, a military fella, and he's in trouble for stuff. And hopefully it's happening really close to the event. Hopefully we don't have 18 years of a gap in between.
My hope is that General Vance does keep to his word.
Who's this?
The General Vance.
General Vance. He's saying what?
Well, he said with Operation Honor, anyone that is charged, if they're found guilty, they'll be released right away and stuff like that. But the problem is the charges take a year, 2 years to come to fruition. And then
Right.
those girls still have to work in that environment. And secondary victimization and re-victimization is way worse than the actual assault or harassment itself.
Well, because you're going through it over and over and over again, right?
Yes.
I mean, every time you talk about it, it's like, okay, but this again.
If you worked at Tim Hortons and were sexually assaulted by your boss, you could go work at another Tim Hortons or find another job.
Right, that's how it
If
goes.
you're in the military and you get harassed or anything by someone in your unit, you're stuck there.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to take a break for a second. We'll be right back. We have to do a commercial. Yeah, we're going to do a commercial. Here we go. So I was at the Lift Expo in Ottawa. Thank you very much to everyone organizing the Lift Expo. We had a great time there. I was there with the whole Green Crush team. Met a lot of fantastic people. There's a lot of innovations going on in the world of cannabis. In the means of obtaining it. I mean, vape construction is out of control now. Some really good quality ones out there. And out there, I met a woman named Sherry Bennett. And Sherry Bennett is also dealing with mental health issues because she's also been traumatized, and she also has a terrible story, and I'll also try to get her into the studio sometime. But this Friday, November 3rd, you want to go see this, was an $80 ticket, $79 ticket, but it's now been, that's for general admission, but for seniors and students, it's $39 to go and see this presentation called Let's Talk Cannabis. And it has to do with HR and legal considerations. So on the stage at the Richmond Hill Center for the Performing Arts, the Let's Talk Cannabis series is the platform for professionals to access industry-leading experts for factual information and guidance. And there's a word you don't often see regarding cannabis, is factual. So the box office number there is 905-787-8811 or online at rhcentre.ca. Let me spell that for you. RHCENTRE, because we flip it that around in Canada. It's not ER. RHCENTRE.ca. And there, Sherry Bennett will be explaining everything for you in what happens. Now, what's going on there is a percentage of the sales go to charity, and the charity is High Notes Avante. This is music for mental illness, Again, $79 general admission. And this is a huge thing because the focus is the world is looking at Canada with this. We are trying to set the stage. And what is this? What is the subject of this particular get-together? It is that with cannabis becoming legalized and people do have a right to medicate with it, sometimes this is going to be a problem with your boss or your coworkers, and you're going to be riding a stigma that's still not dead based on the 80 years of deliberate ignorance put forth by the alleged powers that be. So what's going to happen is eventually you're going to have a legitimate cannabis subscription for your legitimate needs, be it PTSD or otherwise, and there's going to be some jerks at work that want to give you a hard time. Some of them might even be your boss. Well, you can't smoke that here. You can't use that anywhere here. Meanwhile, they won't be saying that to folks on Ativan and all kinds of other Seroquel types of things. But we still carry the stigma beyond legalization. So understand that this particular Friday, November 3rd, $79. Here's the website, www.letstalkcannabis.ca. You can spell that. There's no apostrophe. www.letstalkcannabis.ca. It's for charity and it's for awareness. This is part of the paradigm shift. Okay, so I don't do a lot of commercials. You guys know that. This is a paradigm shift. We're moving from how we used to arrest people from cannabis to a new system of how we arrest people for cannabis. So it's going to be important to pay attention to that. Once again, here's the number if you want to call, and some older folks might want that, right? Because they're asking for seniors and students to come. So here's the phone number again. One more time, it's 905-787-8811 or online at rhcenter, CENTRE.ca. And again, they're looking at us, Canada. We got to do this thing. Thank you, Sherry. Wonderful person. Okay, let's go back to Don now, who's sitting here patiently waiting for this to move along. So, okay. So now what have you been doing all this time to mitigate your PTSD and to be able to be a mother and all these things? Like, I'm guessing, I'm sensing at some point you've made some kind of transitions, and I'd like to hear where you were with your meds and where you're at now and how you're doing.
Okay, so I've been on meds for a long time. Sorry. I started using cannabis quite a few years ago, but then I felt really, really guilty about it because the only way I could get it was for my kids to get it.
I've heard that, yeah.
Because they're teenagers and I'm an adult and
right. Run
not
off to
many
school
people...
and score mommy a dime bag, that kind of thing, right?
Well, no, it wasn't quite like that, but it was hard because then other parents are like, oh, your kids are getting you weed and you're like, and really judgmental. Yeah. And I get hurt when people judge me because I've always used it to feel better and to help me with my anxiety.
Right.
And stuff like that, but people don't see it that way. And I am the type of person that I would take my pills for 6-7 weeks and then start to feel better and then go off them because just marijuana would work for me. Yeah. But then all the doctors are like, you're going crazy, you need it. Right? So
you're going crazy? That's what they told you.
I've been told a lot.
You've heard that come at you like you're going crazy. Someone in an MD said that to you.
Yeah, I've had them tell me that I'm irrational, that I'm all over the place and unstable. But yes, sometimes I am because I have PTSD. But when I finally got like a little bit of separation from my children,
yeah,
and I moved to the country, and my husband was Indigenous. And he kind of showed me that everything was alive. And I found marijuana for trauma. And I got a prescription.
From a decent doctor. It was on your side. Said, okay.
Yes.
And when was that?
That was in about 2015, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's more feasible to me.
So I had been just getting it from my children before that. But once I got a prescription, I was like, oh, wow.
Did you find a quality difference at all from what your kids were buying and what you were taking? You did?
Well, and it was more controllable, too, like what I could actually get. Where with my children, it's like, oh, it's this kind.
Yeah.
But what is that kind?
Right.
You know?
And then you like it, and then later that one's not available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I went through a couple different licensed producers just with quality and product and stuff like that. And then I hooked up with Canna Connect.
Oh, Canna
and
Connect.
med
Tell us
relief.
about that.
Oh my goodness, they are
Tell us about
amazing.
Canna Connect because we read their stuff all the time. I've not mentioned them on the show, but they
I
seem to
called
be
them
great.
and explained my situation because when the government came with that they would only pay for 3 grams, I was kind of freaking out because I use about, like, this is bad, but my
Don't say it's
prescription
bad.
is for 8 grams, but I cook with it. I make tincture.
So you need more than 8 grams, but
I use 8 grams,
Yeah.
but I smoke it. I cook with it.
what do you make? What do you make when you cook with it? What do you do?
Like banana bread, cookies.
So-
Well, actually, I have a cookbook now that you can make anything.
Why didn't you
with
bring
it.
that?
I should have. Yeah.
You should have brought that. You got to bring that. You got to send me that. Okay, because I don't know what I'm doing. I've tried to make butter and things. It doesn't seem to work out. We
Well-
make cookies that taste like it but don't do anything.
The awesome thing is
Yeah.
because I'm with Med Relief and I'm a veteran, they sent me a free magic butter maker.
Oh,
So-
the magic butter, and it's BUDDER or something, and it's
I don't-
like a sleeve that makes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so I can make anything with that, and
Okay.
it's amazing.
Well, this to me sounds like you're asking me to go back to Peterborough with you.
No.
That's the impression I'm getting. You sound
But
like you're set. You make cookies, you make cakes and
Yeah.
things and drinks and stuff. What do you?
I experiment.
Sure.
Like I made spaghetti with it one night,
Oh,
like with
in the
oils
sauce.
and stuff
Oh wow.
in the spaghetti and in the
Right.
sauce.
So you're taking
So-
this in various capacities, and it's different, right? When you smoke or when you vape or when you eat or
Yes.
when you go
It's all
upstairs.
different. Like, I mean, you wake up in the morning and you can take some oil, but that's not going to kick in for like an hour and a half. So
Right.
sometimes you have to smoke it first thing in the morning
Right.
just to get that, like,
You don't have to rationalize that,
Yeah.
especially to me. But yeah.
but you know, like
Yeah.
but then I get, like, because I do have my license and stuff, people are like,
Tell
you
me.
know, like they threaten you because like
What?
yeah.
Because you're legit, they threaten you. Who's they? And what kind of threats?
Just like some people I know, they're like, because you carry your marijuana around with you. Well, yeah, it's in my container. It's totally illegal, but like, I guess because people don't know the legalities
Ignorance.
of it right
Yeah.
now. And then they're like, I'm going to call the police on you. Well, I've told every police officer that I meet that I have my license.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
people, this is all I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, but it's obviously horrible. And this is all just nothing but like the faded out smoke, smell, stigma kind of thing, that the last vestiges of something that, there used to be a fire, you know what I mean, metaphorically, against using it. Now people have been gradually over time. But
Well,
it still stinks in the room with this
Some people
ignorance.
will be my friend, but then when they find out that like I smoke weed all the time, then they don't.
Do you ever
really
ask them
wanna
if
be
they're
my
on
friend.
any kind of prescriptions at all, those people?
No, but like I've tried like my cousin. I probably shouldn't, but my cousin has a lot of problems, and he's been on morphine for years,
Yeah.
and he wants to turn more to marijuana and candies and
He should.
tinctures and stuff. And I'm trying to encourage it because I've seen so many people addicted to drugs and addicted to terrible things.
Oh,
And
sure.
like I don't think cannabis is something because.
So how long have you been using cannabis? Like from your very first puff of trying to fix this to right up to your cookie last night? What was?
In total, probably like 8 years.
Yeah.
But I've only had my license and been able to do the things that I wanted to for the last
For the last few
like
years.
2.5.
Right. So you're like comfortably sat into being able to do this, and you deal with the harassment from the ignorant sometimes.
When I started smoking cannabis on a regular basis and I was in a more safe environment, I was able to go back to school.
Wow.
Which, I mean, I had thought I was a failure because I couldn't be a nurse and I had
Right.
PTSD, but I went and took one course.
Wow.
And I took Indigenous Studies, and it like really opened my mind.
I'll bet.
And then I got a top student. I won like an award for the top of the class.
Huh.
And that really encouraged
Wait
me.
a second. And you were on cannabis at the time?
Oh, yeah.
Once again, dispelling the myth that anybody on cannabis doesn't contribute anything to society. Another myth, another nonsensical thing that a lot of white-haired grandmothers and grandfathers still believe, and that's who the people are that are shaming you. They're coming from ignorance.
I'll be quite honest. The best papers that I write are after I've like medicated.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. It's like you're more open to everything and
Yeah.
things just flow better.
Well, somebody who I have a great respect for is the comedian George Carlin, one of my favorites ever since I'm a little kid, and so listening to George Carlin, his comedy is great, and I say so anyway. I don't some people don't like it, I guess. But I'm a fan of his. Unfortunately, no longer with us. But I read something or heard him in an article heard him in an interview once where he was explaining about his use of cannabis was that he did all the hard work first. Like he got his ideas and wrote everything down. And then he said, and then once that's all kind of set down for the piece, he says, then I light up a joint and it's punch-up time. And that's where all the funny came. And that's where that's where he would learn he would spew it out clear-headed, supposedly, and then get right into using cannabis to shape it into its final, apparently non-useful contribution to society. So, I mean, these people are so wrong. Look at all the musicians and writers and everybody that.
Well, yeah, I have a 600-page story of my life I've written, and I have like over 200 poems that I've written all in a book. So, if I'm that much of a stoner, how can I do all of that? Yeah,
exactly. It's another dispelling of the myth, and I'm so glad you came in today to tell us about it and the fact that you're doing a lot better. You're managing with this stuff, and you don't have all those prescriptions.
Yes, I
right?
quit
You don't have
them
your
all in
Seroquel.
May. In May, I
this
quit
year?
everything because I had
not all
only
at
been
once.
on a couple things. I quit, like went way down. I was only on one medication.
Right.
And then I just quit them all because I was like...
At once? You did that?
Yeah.
Gee whiz, I tapered off a bunch of mine, and I don't know if I could have done it the way you did it. But
well, I kind of like suffered.
Oh, okay,
yeah. But it was kind of the best thing that I could have ever done because I became like spiritually awake, and I just used the cannabis like at all times, and I like learned to use it like Ativan. I learned to use it like in all different ways. I used all my nursing knowledge and put it into the cannabis and used it instead of all the medications, but I also turned to nature too.
Isn't that amazing? That I hear that so often. Yeah, from people, and I feel it too. Like things get nutty, I go out for a walk. Just.
But I went to my psychiatrist and I said I'd rather use cannabis and use nature as a healing tool, and he said,
"You're nuts.
All right, this is my last visit with you. I'll be canceling you from now on."
Because I'm not going to sell any more pharmaceuticals, and you walked out of there with a big old.
I gave a little whoop of joy.
I was hurt because he's my psychiatrist, but then I was like, all right, well, you just push pills, so I don't need you anyways.
No, you don't need them anyway. But we need you, and thanks for your story. I really appreciate you coming in today, Dawn. How can I say it properly? I'm all Dawn Mcilmoyle. And folks, you've been looking at her on the cover of the Maclean's magazine. It's a great article. You should read it. It's kind of bone-chilling. And you had to be a pioneer of pain. I'm so sorry because things are changing right now, and you were back there getting assaulted. It was almost on your lonesome, right? You felt very alone at the beginning of this.
If there's any girls out there that hear this and they have a similar story to me, there's a group called It's Just 700. It's on Facebook.
What's it called?
It's Just 700.
What does that mean?
700 is a number. It's because of when they did the first survey about sexual assault, they said only 700 women.
So it's well more than that, but you're using that against them.
That's what the girl that started the group called it. So
okay, well that makes sense to me. I really appreciate you coming in. And where can folks contact you and to do this and to get in touch with you if they're going to hook up?
I'm on Facebook.
You're on Facebook. Okay.
Or
spell your name for the folks. DAWN
McIlmoyle. And then, like, if you want to email me, it's my name, donmcilmoyle@hotmail.com.
You should. So. If you're having a tough time with PTSD, and not just in the military, I mean, that's where Dawn experienced all of this, unfortunately, and she's turned her life around, and she's been able to get out of a deep, dark hole. And if you're maybe in the deep, dark hole, this can be done. The only reason I wanted Dawn to go deep and dark into her details wasn't to traumatize her, and she stopped me, and that's okay. It was to show folks how terrible it is and how great it can be. And I'm the same way. I don't say about my difficulties. I don't talk about those to elicit sympathy. I do it to show the stark contrast between being that horrible way and then bouncing back to fantastic. So it's been great having you in. I really appreciate it. We're going to close out the show with a little bit of news from it's really a love letter back to Adriana Barton, but if you go online to World Intellectual Property Organization, that's on patentscope.wipo.int, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff after that. But the World Intellectual Property Organization has a thing called a patent scope. And apparently The applicants Webster G.R. Barry, that's B-A-R-R-I-E, Sarna Leonard. Oh, I've got this backwards. It's G.R. Barry Webster, Leonard P. Sarna, and our old friend, the guy that must be 90 years old from Israel, Dr. Raphael Mcilmoyle. Those three are also the inventors working through ADE and Company, Aid and Company. And what they're doing there with their patent is they are using the patent as a conversion of CBDs to Delta 8 THC and Delta 9 THC. And that was taken out in 2008. Like 9 years ago. These folks put in an application, Adriana Barton, for the fact that you can convert CBDs, and that means that the research didn't just start, okay? So hopefully you're listening, Adriana, and if you're a typical, normal, regular person on Facebook, you probably hate me by now because I've shut down your nonsense so effectively that you really can't spew it anymore. I've already written, at the end of that article, there was an error form. If you see an error in this article, please contact the Globe and Mail. It took me an hour to write it up. Yeah, I informed her of her series of errors, and of course I haven't heard from them. They ask you to send this stuff in, and then they don't do anything about it. You know, it's kind of funny. So I won't waste my time anymore on that, but I do want you to know that you are being peppered with nonsense all the time. And we can take it down. We can totally take it down. We should do that. Oh, you don't believe that? No, okay. Well, we are going to take it down. We're going to take this show down, and I'm very grateful that Dawn was here. You've been listening to Green Crush. We come on every single Tuesday at 2:03 p.m., and we're always a little bit late. Yeah, there's an echo in here. And what's happening is every single week, 2:03, a little bit late. And I'm sure we'll have a day off sometime. But basically, we're going to keep this thing going and pointed towards changing the proposals. These are not legal frameworks. These are not how it's going to be. You don't need to think that. That's okay. These are proposals only. This cannabis legislation is a proposal. The reason I'm hitting that word so far is, have you ever received a proposal from someone that you really didn't want to say yes to? Like maybe some creep back at the high school dance, or maybe some kind of lecherous coworker offer of something that, if you follow up on, might traumatize you? You would say no to that proposal, and I say no to Kathleen Wynne, and I say no to Justin Trudeau. This isn't the plan that anyone needs. This is nothing but your interior greed manifesting itself into a lecherous, horrible, and when I say lecherous, I mean they're playing on people's sexuality, they're playing on people's needs, they're lying about evidence, they're omitting evidence. And it's all stopping right now, because if you listen to their show and you tell friends to do that, and I wish you would, you might find some relief yourself, because something bad is going to happen to either you or someone you care about. This is the statistics. I'm not trying to be a harbinger of doom, but apparently 1 in 2 people get taken out by cancer, or get cancer and get out of it. So this is not irrelevant. This is not a hippie. This is not any kind of crazy thing. I am pushing back as hard as I can push. And if you're a dedicated listener, or a new listener, or anybody interested in this, and you think you've got an angle, and you think you've got a piece of information that I could greatly use as a weapon to go into the throats of the behemoth monsters that are telling us lies so that they can profit, so that they can proffer an illegal, murderous industry. 300,000 people dead since 2000 from opioids? ISIS wishes it could do that well. And look at all the money we pump into terrorism to try to stop the bad guys. Who are the bad guys? I think it's worse to kill 300,000 people on hopes and lies and dreams, trying to convince them that they're doing better with these drugs and then they eventually die from, than it is I think it's a terrible idea. And it's only education and awareness, and that's what I'm trying to do, because I know the government's going to be gearing up soon with their education program. And before you read anything from the government about an education program, crack open your favorite dictionary, either the paper one or the one online, and look up the word indoctrination. Look up the word propaganda. While you're at it, look up the word bullshit, because it's all swimming in there. I'm doing okay. Let's just remember I was dead and dying, and that's it, and you're done, and there's no hope. Only I'm sitting here today to tell you that's all not true. Join us again next week, just after 2:03. Green Crush. Thanks a bunch.